time once again to slip into your camo, grab your bow, and join us out in the field for another episode of the Up North Journal, presented by PSE Archery. The Up North Journal crew is knocked and ready to rock for another exciting adventure, so let's step outside and hit the trail.
This episode of the Up North Journal podcast is brought to you by PSE Archery,
Spot Shooters Archery,
Easy Cut,
Packer Max,
Hunter's Blend Coffee,
Scent Lock,
Scent Blocker,
Limb Walker Game Calls,
Buck Baits,
Gut Check,
Stanislavski Release Aids,
Copper John,
Fourth Arrow Camera Arms,
Wind Sense Vapor Hunting Products,
and Rebel 6 Rubs. And don't forget, you can catch us in syndication at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on goodtalkradio.com. Welcome back to another episode of the Up North Journal podcast, everybody. I'm host Mike Adams, sitting in the cabin tonight with Dan DeFall on a warm last Sunday night of 2019, heading into a new decade.
Warm is not the select word. I would say above average, where it's really foggy out there.
It is foggy. It's crazy out.
But you know what? That's a good time when it's foggy outside. You shouldn't be out on the road. You should be inside, sitting there, watching us live on Facebook. And while you're doing that, you can help our supporters out. And
That's
why
right.
don't you do that by going over to huntersblendcoffee.com. And if you use the promo code capital UNJ on the checkout, you will get 10% off your order.
Right there. You can see the promo code.
That's right. With that, helping out our supporter, Buck Baits, you can go over to their website as well, buckbaits.com. Use the promo code UpNorthJournal. You'll get 20% on your checkout there. They've got everything over there from scents, cover scents, and calls, and you can check them out and help us out. And last but not least, Rebel 6 Rubs. It's the holiday season. Everybody's cooking, doing some stuff. Why not get over there? Use the promo code NorthJournal. You'll get 20% out on your checkout over at rebel6rubs.com.
And actually, I want to give another quick shout out. I just see Tim Cius has joined us. And if memory serves me, this coming Friday, he is starting his live stream back up. Friday nights at 8 o'clock?
8 o'clock usually, unless
Live on the limb.
Yes, unless he says something different.
I do believe that's when his starts.
Yes.
So we'll find out here. He'll post here in just a second. So make sure you get over. He does turkey hunting in West Virginia. He says the best Virginia. I think Whirlybird over in Virginia would have something to say about that. But
and Dustin is on that show.
He's on.
He's on. So.
Wow, talk about timing.
Right, exactly.
All right.
It wasn't even planned, so...
Tim, Dustin, you guys can go off in the corner. You guys can fight over there about which Virginia is the best Virginia. So yeah, we got two West Virginia, Virginia, and we got two from New Jersey in the house. We got somebody from downstate here in Michigan. So
right,
starting to spread out across the eastern seaboard here.
Right, exactly. So, with that being said, like you said, a big shout out, also a supporter of Up North Journal, Tim Cius in his call. So
absolutely. So go over and check out his Facebook page as well. So
Jeremy Jackson's in the house.
Hey, Jeremy, what's going on? Last show of the decade.
Yep.
So what do you want to talk about tonight?
Well, 7:30, we're going to have Ken on. We're going to talk about him and his deer hunting. But first segment, last week was just an entire show of talking about elk.
Mm-hmm.
And as the week went by, there was a couple things you posted about wolves. Mm-hmm. Imagine that. But you kind of got a little list of from the mandatory meeting that you had.
The orientation.
Yep. But I want to kind of roll that into what about the wolves as well was kind of.
Yeah, I threw a few cherry bombs in the fire this week for Danny because, he's so fond of wolves. So I actually watched a wolf show, and that was on the Outdoor Channel talking about the introduction of wolves back in 1994 or 5 to Yellowstone and what's happened since. And then there was one I posted for Idaho. And what's so funny over there, Danny? You read, are the boys going at it?
Yeah, it started.
Oh, man. All right. Going to put them in the corner.
So you started it, and now they're off and running. So.
Right. Well, okay. They can go at it there while we're talking.
So, yeah, but, you got some information, and then the wolf show was on, and it just...
And I watched something else, too, this week, and I didn't post anything about it, but they were out in Utah, and they were doing some work. Fish and Game was doing work on wild buffalo, bison, American bison. There's 4 herds left of wild bison, actually free-roaming wild bison.
Okay.
One of them's up there in Utah, and that one's managed exclusively by hunting only. And they were flying in, they were doing tranquilizer dart and then the net capture on the younger ones, and tranquilizing them, collaring in them, and taking samples, blood and stool samples and other hair samples and things of that nature, and they're helping to keep this herd viable. And they say it's one of the last 4 pure, truly American bison herds, genetically pure. So that was kind of cool watching that. And then, like I said, the wolf thing. I've kind of started looking at more than just Michigan or the Great Lakes as far as outdoors goes. Well, my interest is starting to, reach out further.
Okay. So, which is good. You're not narrow-minded about Michigan only.
I try not to be.
Right, exactly. So branch out, right? Mm-hmm. So what's happening in other states?
What do you mean what's happening in other states? What I found out?
Yeah, exactly. You're finding out different things that are happening in other states with the wolves, with their populations they have. And God forbid you'd like to look at maybe like Kansas or something to maybe get a recollection of the deer, how they manage their deer.
You're going to go there, huh?
Because, wait, maybe then there's Iowa, how they manage their deer. Yeah. Wait, let's go a little closer to Ohio. Yeah. How do they manage their deer?
Yeah. Okay.
I'm just saying.
You're stirring the pot tonight.
No, I am not. You're the one that's got the cherry bomb question.
Okay. Well, what do you want to start with? Where do you want to
go? Tim Cius, well, let's start here. Tim Cius says, have you seen the article from an outdoor writer about how the wolf introduction has helped the environment?
No.
I haven't seen that.
No, I haven't seen it.
No, Tim.
It's probably in the New York Times or something.
Actually, if you could put a link in there, we'd like to kind of see it.
Well, the show that I was watching, I can't remember the name of it now, but it was on the Outdoor Channel, and it was done through Hunter Nation, that new outdoor group that's promoting heritage hunting and preservation of wild game species and things of that nature. But just a couple notes that I made. This is in Yellowstone, out west. Exclusively, these numbers are for. In 1995, they introduced 74 Canadian wolves into Yellowstone.
74, okay.
And in 5 short years, in the year 2000, the number more than doubled to 175 plus in the wolf pack. Okay? And that's not so many wolves. Well, in 1995, when they introduced those wolves, there was over 19,000 elk in Yellowstone. That was their count of elk.
Mm-hmm.
In that same year of 2000, when they did that next wolf count, where the wolves doubled, the population of elk went down to under 11,000. Not quite half, but pretty close to half.
And they are attributing that this reduction in the herd was specifically due to wolfism.
That was what they're surmising. Also, in the year 1995, when they introduced these 74 wolves, there was approximately 4,000 moose in Yellowstone. And now, or not now, 5 short years later, the same year that they did the other counts, there was less than 2,000. And the numbers are even down even less now. So,
wow, that's kind of interesting. We introduce the wolf, then we go ahead and protect it, put it on species list so nobody can shoot it. They have free reign of doing anything they want, and you can't do nothing about it.
Well, and the whole push of that story was mainly about how the wolf has been politicized. And how we were brought up. That was another aspect of it, how we were brought up as kids to view the wolf, whether it be propaganda or not. I mean, you had Little Red Riding Hood, the Big Bad Wolf, you had the Big Bad Wolf and 3 Little Pigs. So you heard all these folklore stories.
And negativity.
Yeah, in a negative light, and rightfully so. So the other issue is so we got all these wolves there. Well, they don't know where the boundaries are. They don't stay within the boundaries because you can't hunt in Yellowstone. So their main thing was these numbers of elk and moose being reduced is also leading to less sightings of these animals. People go to Yellowstone to see nature. They go to see wild animals. They said prior to the wolf, you could drive through and you were guaranteed as you drive through, you were going to see hundreds of elk and moose. Now people drive through and sometimes don't see any.
Right.
So, and you asked a good question. You said, well, what about bear and mountain lion? Well, these counts were taken in 1995 and 2000. So in that 5 short years, there was a big reduction. Before that, those populations were stable.
Right. Everything was stable. The only factor added was the introduction of a wolf.
Yep.
So they could see an increase in fatalities, or actually they could. I'm sure being how they watch that group, they probably do a lot more flyovers. They do a lot more. So like in the wintertime, you could definitely tell kills at sites and whole nine yards. So yeah, so interesting fact.
I thought it was interesting. It's just I watched it. And I always, like I said, I try to take things with a grain of salt, and I don't believe everything that I read. But the numbers were interesting, and
I want to say that you first got to look at. You're right. Take everything with a grain of salt because everybody has
an agenda.
So if we kind of take a little bit of this pie and a little bit of that pie and we kind of mush it together, we'll probably get somewhere close to the story.
Right.
And so I kind of like where you're going and where you've been with, hey, we introduced the wolf. Our populations are declining.
But we can't get the wolves delisted.
But we're not doing anything to
stabilize it.
Right. So why? Okay, so you said there was 100 and how many wolves? 100.
There was 175 plus in year 2000.
Okay, so 175. Why not say let's cap it at 125?
Yeah. Well, and the other issue they were talking about is how it's progressed across, eastward into the Great Lakes states, and where these now, populations are doing very well and stabilized, but yet and still we're not managing these populations. It's just like any other apex predator; they need to be managed. We have
when we have an invasive species in our waters, they jump into action. Mm-hmm. We have an invasive species. I want to say the cormorant was an invasive species.
Yeah, the round goby, milfoil.
Yep,
I think was it milfoil.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right.
I'm not sure on that one.
Aquatic plants, we talked to
Asian carp.
Yeah, we do something about it.
Right.
Wolves.
Yeah.
We sit quiet.
Right.
Kind of scares you. And then if anybody's been on Facebook and you've seen the videos out there, it's pretty disturbing when they go after your pets.
Absolutely.
And I watched that video a couple times, and it just bugs me.
Yeah. When you watch two wolves rip apart a dog on camera, it's off of somebody's security camera. It's
right. And Jeremy says in 2016, I believe a wolf 160 pounds was killed. Jeremy, wolves that are that big, yes, because who's going to stop them? Mm-hmm. They're free ranging, dinner plate, open menu.
Well, you heard us talk a little bit about Donnie Vincent, a filmmaker, cinematographer. He's a hunter, but they go into these remote locations and do a lot of filming. And I don't know if you've ever watched it, but if you get a chance, go to Vimeo.com and search Who We Are. And he talks about being hunters and as humans, us hunting species and eating, meat and what have you, and that whole history of that. But at one point, he talked about being hunted instead of being the hunter. He was surrounded by 5 wolves.
Yes, he talks about that. Yeah,
and what a feeling that was. To be all of a sudden the tables are turned. So, it's not like if you're out there by yourself, there's that chance that you could be dinner.
The way they work, yep. So. And Dustin, I just want to give you a shout out. You're bringing up something that I'm not going to go after tonight because Dustin makes a comment about Virginia being the last to do anything about look at EHD killing the deer herd down there, and do they do anything for EHD? No, only CWD. Mm-hmm. Now there's a reason, and it has dollar signs on it.
Right.
So, anyways, so with this, this whole thing of science behind our decisions would make common sense.
You would think so.
And when you say that,
that's happening right now in the state of Michigan. There's a big push to bring back deer baiting through legislation. I'm kind of jumping in a different direction here real quick before we go to a break. But, we have proposals.
That got shot down, I think.
Well, it's going to be. The governor said she's not going to pass that legislation. But the problem is when we start managing our natural resources and our wildlife by our legislature instead of by sound science and the wildlife biologists that we, as state of Michigan voters, has said that's what we want, and then you're circumventing that to get to an issue that you feel that you need to pass. It's not the right way to do things.
It's not the right way to do things. But we got to give a shout out. The governor did do something right.
Yeah, she appointed a really good friend of ours, Anna Mitterling, to the NRC.
Yes.
She is going to be on Michigan's NRC, Natural Resource Commission.
Congratulations to her.
A huge congratulations to her, and that is a huge win for us hunters and anglers here in the state of Michigan. So big shout out and congratulations to Anna. We've done some work with her, and she has been to our deer camp and did some work.
And we were down at her place with a bunch of southern
co-op leaders.
Co-op leaders.
Yeah.
You know, we went down there, and lo and behold, she was appointed, and she is quite thankful, and we are thankful to hear that she's been appointed.
And I think it's a 4-year term. I'm not sure. It might
I
be
want to
2.
say so.
But I think it's 4 years.
4? Okay.
But back to the wolves real quick before we go to break. HunterNation.org. Go check that out. That website out. They're really pushing the hunting heritage and preserving our wildlife, our game species, and things of that nature. So go over and check it out, and you can see it for yourself and see what we've been talking about. So I tell you what, we're running a little long here, so let's step outside. We'll take our first break. We'll come back. We'll talk a little more about the Michigan elk. We'll be right back after this.
PSE Archery has reinvented the way you buy bows.
From now on, you can make the most educated decision possible.
By basing your bow choice specifically on your shooting needs and goals.
All you need to do is ask yourself, what kind of shooter am I? What do I want to achieve?
PSE will help find the right category for you.
So, what kind of shooter are you?
Find out at psearchery.com.
Welcome back. Second segment of the show. Okay, we got the dirty stuff out.
Yeah, let's get the dirty stuff out of it.
So, the Michigan elk.
Yeah, the Michigan elk. You attempted. We haven't heard any final numbers on how many was successful out of the 100 that were hunting.
Mm-hmm.
But the week you had was you want to talk about a roller coaster of weather. If it would have been this week, would have been real interesting.
Yeah, we wouldn't have had to trudge through snow. We would have had warmer temperatures.
Right.
Probably had a little more success.
But what did you learn at your mandatory meeting about the elk?
Last year was the 100-year anniversary of the reintroduction of elk in Michigan. 1918 is when they really reintroduced them because they were hunted out of existence. The last native elk in Michigan was killed in the late 1800s. Don't know exactly what year, but it was somewhere in the late 1800s. I believe he said 1880 something or other.
Okay.
And in 1913, a guy from West Branch, actually, his name was Henry Crabtree. He lived in West Branch, Michigan, which is about halfway up the state. He sent this letter to the state of Michigan together with some newspaper clippings regarding the distribution of elk to different states throughout the Union at that time by the United States government. So what they were trying to do was reestablish native elk ranges across the United States where they originally were, much like they have done with the wolf.
Right.
Okay. So this Michigan person was concerned, and lo and behold, in 1918, the state of Michigan received 7 elk. And actually, what's really cool about it, and I did not know, that these elk were shipped in via rail car. Of course, back then, you're not going to do an airdrop on them because
right.
We're talking 1918. But they brought 7 elk, Rocky Mountain elk from out west. And I forget which state it was. I think it was either Wyoming or Colorado. But I've actually got a picture here. And this photo, actually, my guide, I believe, has the same photo.
Okay.
And these were released in exactly the little town we stayed in.
Okay.
Like right near the property of where my guide lives, he said.
Oh, really?
They were released like right over there, just outside the Pigeon River Forest area, which I don't think was the Pigeon River Forest area at that time.
So you know what? It's kind of funny you mentioned that because I'm just thinking real quick what we kind of talked about the last week or so. They released them for all purposes in Wolverine, and now they're like, we got to move them east.
Yeah.
And that's probably because of infringement of now. The rail system was only to there, and now you've got
back then
the interstates and everything now.
Back then there was logging camps in that area.
Yeah,
that whole area of northern Michigan was being logged, and actually the area we hunted. If you go on, like we were on a couple different pieces of private land, and there's still rail lines. I mean, we're talking like the smaller gauge, not like a full blown rail spike or spur,
right?
But they would shoot these off the main line. They'd shoot these railroad spurs out into the woods, and they build it up a little bit, and they're narrow, probably as wide as a car, and they cut and fell the trees and stack the logs on and ship them out.
And they were cutting them by hand.
Yeah, and then at that time, like the 80 acres that my guide has, that my dad and him co-owned at one time, there's 3 of them on that property. And I didn't know it as a kid. I never knew that. And right down the road, another piece of property that we were out scouting one day, with permission from that landlord, they've got an original line as well. And you start looking in that area on state land, and you can see these old rail lines.
Right.
So they shipped them in via rail car, and they turned 7 loose. They did this 3 times, and 2 other groups they didn't survive. But this one group of 7 survived, and we now have 1,600 elk in the state of Michigan in the northern Lower Peninsula because of those 7 elk. They are genetically linked to those 7.
Gotcha. All right, so they're the original 7.
The original 7. Yeah, and you think about that going back at that time in 1918, and thinking about where they put them, where they'd be viable, and then releasing them, managing them, and not allowing them to be hunted. There was no season at that time, and then all of a sudden the herd got to be where they needed to be, and they had a hunt. They used management, unlike the wolf. Just saying.
Right.
So that's where it started. In 1939, they did a survey of the area, and there's about 300 to 400 elk. So in 20 years, it went from 7 to 300 to 400 elk population. In 1958, they did another survey, and there was 900 to 1,000. So, just a few short years, it was 40 years, we went from 7 to almost 1,000.
Right.
So, you think about
there wasn't a predator around bringing their numbers down.
I don't know when the last wolf was killed in Michigan.
We don't know, but obviously in this area it was good enough to cover whatever they had to keep the numbers growing.
Thermal cover, habitat, food, water. They weren't being pressured. And then 64 and 65, there was about 1,500 elk, and the state of Michigan had their first hunt. And from what I gathered, I heard behind the scenes, not at this meeting, but I heard from people that were up there, that lived in the area, and I'm hearing this second and third hand, obviously, that most of those tags went to people downstate.
My uncle got one.
In the political district. And your uncle lived where, Detroit area?
He lived in Roseville, yeah.
Okay, so there you go. And that's what they said. Most of the tags came downstate. The locals up there were ticked off.
Really?
So when that happened,
I'll have to try to find the picture. He's got a picture of an elk that is laying across the trunk of a car.
So that had been 64, 65?
Yep.
Wow. That's cool.
I'll have to go find it.
Here we are talking about, and all of a sudden there's a connection I didn't even know about.
Right.
So by 1975, there was only 200 elk left. The locals up there were ticked off. They started shooting elk out of season. They were taking them because they didn't get their chance at a tag.
Oh.
So all of a sudden it's like, whoa, wait a minute. We've got to do something here. The state of Michigan then put a plan together, an actual elk management plan. And in 1975, the plan was to keep roughly 500 to 600 elk in the population. They figured that's what the population could be sustained at up in that area. And in 1984, they had a goal. They reevaluated. They had a goal of 600 elk, and they kept massaging this plan back and forth between 600 and 800. And then in 2012, they did it again, and now they're saying 500 to 900. So they're really micromanaging this pocket of elk.
And you know what that tells me is it's a liquid plan. It's not. We're gonna look at it and we're gonna adjust accordingly. It's not going to be always 800. No, they're gonna because of whatever.
Right.
Whatever the reason being. So far, they're as of 2012. We're at.
The plan wanted to keep 500 to 900. Right. That was their plan. And hunting was going to be the primary way to control the population. And that's what they're doing today.
Yeah.
And they do an annual elk survey every year to see how many tags they need to give out for the next year. And they're going to do those flyovers here in January, February.
Yep.
When all the deciduous trees lose their leaves, you can see down, you got snow on the ground. An elk pretty well stands out.
Yeah, it does. And they're usually in groups. So it's not like you're going to do a onesie, two. When you see one, you're going to see whatever the group is because you're going to pick them all up.
Yeah, and they fly the home range. Home range is about the bulls average about in the home range is about 35 square miles. A cow's home range is about 22 square miles. So these animals travel quite a bit.
Got big enough hooves, they can hoof it.
So and the way they do it, like I said, was by air, and they fly what's called a grid cell, and there's 100 grid cells over this elk range, and they're 2 miles wide by 6 miles long.
Okay.
And they'll fly it multiple times with multiple people in the plane, and every time they fly it, they'll get a count, and then they take each other's count to see who has that highest total.
Right.
Because some people might miss a few,
depending
on what side of the plane you're looking out of.
Absolutely. Or yep, totally get it.
And they said that that usually takes about 4,800 miles of flight to cover the elk range.
Okay.
So
that's pretty cool. That's a good thing. They do that with, I know they do with the plane, with the wolves on the Upper Peninsula. So, but, something like this and how well managed this is, and with you going through the whole experience of having to go to the talk and your week's worth, it's a well managed plan, and they're really up on it.
Yeah, they are. They take it very seriously, and I'm glad they do. But just, looking at this picture here that we've got up, that's one of the 7.
Yeah, original 7.
One of the original 7 that we can thank now for having elk in the state of Michigan.
Yep, and now at the 900 whatever plus they have now, all goes back to one of those.
Right. Yep. And I think this year they said that the herd was around 1,500. They issued 200 tags, but within that, there's also Native American tags that the tribes get, and they get to take so many. So we see our 200 tags, but there are a few other tags that are out there.
They've expanded them so natives can get them. Hunters can get them, and
then there's the Pure Michigan Hunt. I think there's 5 tags given out in that as well.
Right, and those are all factored into their numbers.
Yep. So they'll do their assessment again this year, and then they'll adjust accordingly. So
and you gotta like that. Wow, that's a well managed plan. Yeah, you know what, Craig? It's a good history lesson, but it's something that might they just didn't bring y'all into a gymnasium.
It was at the township hall.
And just said, "Hey guys,
here's your tags.
Here's your tags." No, they made it worth the 2 hours of giving you a brief history of what you're doing, so you're just not, "Hey, here's your tag. Hit the woods. See ya."
Yeah, have at it. And I think I was the only one taking notes of all the people there. But I mean, I was genuinely interested in that. And you can't see it. Hang on just a second here. I got to reach up here and grab this real quick, because this is one thing they did ask about. Is the elk license plate, the habitat, the conservation or conserved wild habitat plate, and that's my plate right there that I got on my vehicle, and I paid the extra money and actually got an extra one so I could have it here in the office. But the money we pay for these plates goes back into conservation. Yep. It has the elk on it, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. It is pretty cool. So,
and I was one of maybe 10 people there that had it, because they asked. They said, "Well, how many of you here have the conservation plate, the elk conservation plate?" Raise your hand. So.
Oh, okay. So you did your part with the plate.
Yeah, and I got it again for this year. I mean, I paid my money so I could keep it. I'm going to keep it, as long as I can.
And you pay your extra few $10 for the parks.
Yep.
So you help out on a couple different ways.
Well, and that's just it. I never dreamed I'd ever draw a tag. I never thought, but I always paid my money, for the point or for the chance to be drawn. My kids, it's just a way to give back a little extra money and put in there for, habitat. Because it not only benefits the elk, it benefits other wildlife as well.
Right. You got to like that.
So, but thank you to Henry Crabtree in 1913 having enough foresight to say, we need elk back in Michigan. And by him sending that letter spurred enough interest, and I guess, like I said, they were pushing elk across, shipping elk back to different areas. I think Pennsylvania has elk. Tim, see us if you're still on. I think West Virginia has elk. I know Kentucky does. I think Tennessee does.
West Virginia was just, didn't they just bring some in last year?
I think so.
He talked about it on his show.
I think there's still there's states that are still trying to get a viable elk population. So
right. So
I like it.
Yeah,
it's cool.
Absolutely.
It's cool. So there is your history lesson for the state of Michigan and the elk population.
And anything you didn't want to know, you now know.
Yeah.
And I know. So it makes 2 of us.
There you go. So.
And we pass it on to everybody out there.
Right. So what do you think? Time to take a break and see if we can get a hold of Ken?
Let's get a hold of Ken, get him on here, and let's hear about him.
All right, we're going to step outside. We're going to take our next break, and we'll be back right after this, hopefully with Ken Scicluna, and we'll be talking a little bit of deer hunting here in Michigan. We'll be right back after this.
PSE Archery has always dominated the speed category. Now, the most revolutionary cam system ever to hit the market has perfected the shooting experience. Introducing PSE's Evolve Cam System, featuring extremely high let-off capabilities and the smoothest draw cycle in history. No other cam system has ever delivered this level of total comfort and total control. Experience PSE. Experience performance.
Welcome back. Third segment here at the Up North Journal. We are sitting in the cabin, and we do have our good buddy Ken Scicluna on.
You know, I'm kind of sad, Ken. I thought you'd be reporting from the rocket ship that you put together. You put together on Christmas.
Yeah, you know, when,
actually Santa put it together, and then I'm kind of sad that you're not reporting from it.
Well, funny story. Santa thought that was a pop-up tent when he bought it on Amazon, and I was surprised when it showed up, and it was not a pop-up tent. And we don't have a very big house, so that was fun.
Nice. It was a Christmas surprise.
Christmas surprise. That's what it was for everybody.
Yeah, nice. Well, you know, you got to listen a little bit to the live part. We were talking about the elk. You know, what's your quick take on what you heard? You got any questions?
No, not really. You know, I've always, I really enjoyed it, first of all. Like I was telling you on the break there, I didn't know it was only 7. And, you know, growing up, you know, when my uncle was alive, he had property that butted up to the Pigeon River Forest. So just outside of Gaylord there, and Spar, actually. And so all my childhood, all through my teenage years, early 20s, I grew up going there. We always seen the elk. I'm very familiar with Pigeon River country. I've always just been really fascinated with that part of the state and with the elk, and that was really cool. I mean, I've been putting in for, I think this May will be 13 or 14 years in a row, and I just, boy, what a special opportunity you had there. And I've always wanted to go to that meeting. I don't know if it was open to the public, but I've always wanted to go to that meeting, and I love seeing the elk hunting stories on Michigan Outdoors, and I love everything about that part of our state and that whole deal there.
You know, the Pigeon River Wildlife Area, it's just such, it's indescribable. I mean, you have to spend time there and really embrace it to understand really what we're talking about, because it's just such I almost say almost mystical place.
It really is.
It's got a real allure to it that just, once you're there, you just don't want to leave. It's just really cool. So,
Yep.
Well, so, you know, we're talking 2019. We're into the decade here. We're kind of wrapping up and everything. And we saw, was it last week or week before last? You've made the muzzleloader and then the late antlerless season. You've been out on your lease, and you've had quite a time.
I did. I finally shot a doe. Finally got one down on the ground there, and I was real happy for that. I think that was 2 Saturdays ago. And, boy, let me tell you, after hitting that giant and not recovering it and then missing the one during gun season, boy, it felt good to shoot that doe and watch it drop. It was a relief. I mean, I needed that in the worst way. And, I was just so glad to get that deer on the ground, and it's at the processor, and I'm picking it up on Friday, so I can't wait.
And speaking of that, we got a question right off the bat from Dustin, who's been kind of following you along here. Have you heard anything about the big buck, whether a neighbor found it, a neighbor shot it, or has it been seen?
I haven't. I have been in contact with a neighbor. I have another buddy, a tournament bass fishing buddy of mine, that Coinkadink. He hunts 2 properties north. It was a big mind-blowing thing when I found out he just hunted there. So I've been checking with him. He's got cameras out. I'm going to do a card pull here. I'm going to hunt New Year's Day, and after the hunt, I'm going to go around and get all my cards and see, and hopefully he's on camera. You know, I haven't heard anything yet.
Okay.
We still have a lot. We still have several cameras to check. So,
well, with that being said, are you going to leave those cameras out to see if you can catch them later in the season?
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah, I'm just doing a card swap, and we locked down the lease for next year already. It's contract signed. We're good to go. So I'm going to leave. The cameras are going to be a year-round thing, and of course, I'll move them. I'll probably move them a little bit or add more to it. Probably is what I'll do. And I'm definitely going to be. I know I will know that buck when I see it.
Right. Now, so you went out and you had just purchased, I believe, a 450. Is that what you shot that doe with, or was it muzzleloader?
No, that was a muzzleloader. I haven't got the 450 sighted in yet, so I shot that doe with the muzzleloader at about 30 yards. And want me to tell the story?
Yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely. Story? Yeah.
That's why you're here.
So I was hunting behind the ghost spine, just a run and gun setup. For the wind that day, I picked out a spot playing the wind. I knew the does come into that field every night, and picked a spot, nestled back in some woods right on the field edge and behind the ghost blind. And about 5:15, of course, I've got my nose in my phone. I just made a comment or something on Facebook. I hate to admit it, but I did. I'm down and I just was commenting on somebody's post on Facebook, and I look up and there's these little notches on the ghost blind. And I look up and there's this doe just staring right at the ghost blind. She doesn't got me pegged yet, but she's probably saw my head bobbing around or something, and she's looking right at me. And but then she kind of relaxes. She put her head back down and kept eating the clover that's in that field. And I propped the gun up on the ghost blind, and she looked up again at me. And I had the scope on 3, and I dialed her up to 10, and I put that baby right on her front of her chest, and I shot. And I can't believe she ran as far as she did, but she ran about 80 yards, and I saw her fall over right at the field edge. And I walked right over there, and that was it, man. It was great.
And the adrenaline's pumping at that time.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think I remember I hurt my wrist. I did such a huge fist pump, like I had snapped my wrist from fist pumping so hard when I recovered her. I was so happy, and boy, to see that, like I said, to see her go down, it was just a relief, Yeah,
isn't that awesome? I mean, when you seal the deal, and that feeling is like, yes, I got it, and is going to be eating good in the neighborhood tonight,
Yes, it's the feeling we all chase. I tell people this all the time. Nothing else and that's why I'm such a fanatic about deer hunting. Nothing else matches that for me. I mean, my heart thumps a little bit when I get a 5-6 pounder fishing, turkey hunting, things like that. But that feeling, that high you get when you're about to make a shot, or you make a shot, or when you recover an animal, it's the ultimate for me. And whether it's a doe or a buck or whatever, it's the pinnacle for me. I love it.
Okay, so now you said you took it to a processor?
Yeah, it was great. I let it hang all week because the temperatures were perfect. It was that real cold week we had. It was great temperatures, high 20s, very low 30s. I let it hang for a week in my backyard. I dropped it off at the processor there and got some sausage made up and some stew meat and back straps. I'm going to pick it up Friday.
That's awesome.
So were the neighbors overly excited about seeing one of Santa's deers hung up in the backyard?
Well, thankfully, the neighbor on the one side, he's a big time deer hunter, and I know the other neighbors, they're fine with it too. So I got no one complaining.
That's good. Yeah,
I've had that problem before.
Have you?
Yeah. When I first moved out of the house, I moved into a trailer park in Highland, and I had shot a deer, and the only tree I had was in the front yard, and I had this buck hanging in the front of the trailer there, and sure enough, like a day later, I got a nasty note on my door, and I had to take it down.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
My neighbors are used to it. They're used to seeing deer hanging from the basketball pole, getting skinned or getting quartered up.
Yeah.
Whether boil skulls outside, for Euro mounts. It's just, They're just saying, it's the Adamses. That's all they say. Don't pay attention to that crazy guy across the street.
Right.
That crazy hillbilly over there.
That's right. Right.
And to answer Dustin's next question, do you guys have to take to quarter or take to the processor whole? We take them whole to the processor here. You can take them quartered if you want to skin them yourself.
Yeah, I've actually taken them deboned before.
Yeah, you can. You can literally just take your whole deer there and drop it off. They'll, if you want the head, they'll cut the head right off. If you want it caped, they'll do that. But no, you can take the whole deer.
I took some in one time. I didn't want to pay to have it processed, and that back at that time, right when I first started processing my own deer, and my dad just let me do what I wanted to do with it, and I deboned it, cut the steaks out of it. What I had left, I took to a processor to actually make summer sausage out of.
Right.
So that worked.
Yep.
So
yeah,
looking back, I remember at the beginning of the season, we talked a little bit about doe management, and you said you really didn't think your neighbors of the lease practiced that. Did they say anything to you? Did they know you shot a doe or?
Nope. I haven't told them anything I've done at all. I mean, of course, I report it to the landowner. That's part of the agreement. They want to know each time we take an animal, so I let them know. But no, I haven't. I suppose I'd tell the neighbors if they asked me. If they wanted to know, I'd tell. Yeah, we took some does. That property really. I mean, it's not always the right. I mean, people say you got to shoot does. That's not always the case.
Mm-hmm.
But on this property, I'm not exaggerating when I say there's 20 to 30 does on this property almost all the time.
Right.
It's in North Ann Arbor. I mean, it's just words can't describe how overly populated this area is, and it's a lot of does. I mean, they're everywhere.
Right.
I mean, there's probably I know for sure there's at least 2 separate doe families. I think there's 3, and they all have 7 to 10 to 12 in there. And I mean, you can't barely walk on that property without kicking up 7 deer.
Right, so exactly. And what's going to be nice for you now that you've locked in this lease for the next year, you can start to formulate a plan now and kind of work it out from now until whenever, October 1st, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, and the wheels are spinning already. I've got so many ideas. I'm going to be spending all winter, all spring doing habitat improvements. I've got the green light for that. I'm getting the phone number for the farmer. I'd like to get in touch with him, see if I could work something out with him, if maybe he could leave us just a couple areas for food plots, or maybe I heard he's going to plant beans. Maybe we could compensate him. Hey, can you leave me a 1 acre plot of leave the beans standing for me, or see if I can work something out with him so we can do a little bit of something with food. I've got plenty of ideas for trails and making some bedding areas and planting switchgrass, and my mind's going, I think about it every day. So
good.
I can't wait. Yeah.
And you know what? Yeah. And the one thing that you've already recognized is that communication. You're going to have to communicate with the landowner and make it work.
Yeah. Transparency is key in everything. And, so, yeah, I've got all kinds of ideas, and we're definitely looking to do doe management. I'd like to do early doe season, but I'm kind of finicky about that because I don't want to blow the property out in the middle of September. So I'm hoping we can do some early doe season, but do it at the front of the property and not jack anything up too bad.
Right on.
And like you said, transparency is key. There was a couple of guys that I knew that weren't transparent. Basically in a nutshell, what they did is they shot a couple deer. All they did was take the back straps, left the rest of the deer there. And
that's messed up. Yeah.
Right. The person, the lease owner, was not very happy, and he booted them.
Don't blame him.
Yeah. And I even, when I shot that, when I shot that big buck, I even called just to get permission to have my friends come, just to get permission for them to step foot on the property to help me track. And I think she really appreciated that. I just made sure I even called just to bring someone on there just to track.
Right.
So I just want to make sure I do not want to lose it over something silly.
Well, that's it, right? And that's just one of the things is just being open communications and making sure that she knows who she's dealing with in case she's ever driving by and sees
a different vehicle.
Yeah,
right?
Different vehicle. Somebody doesn't look familiar, and they can ask them.
Yeah, we did that with our lease down in Indiana. I mean, they had my make and model of my vehicle and plate number. And, all that, and everybody that's supposed to be on the property. So we were very upfront with them, and there's times we weren't sure about something. We'd ask, instead of just going and doing it and then asking for forgiveness. That's not the way to do things. So.
Right.
Nope.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're bumping up here on our next break. We come back, we'll continue the conversation, talk a little bit about wrapping up this fine 2019 deer season.
And decade.
We'll be right back after this.
Acceleration is part of PSE's DNA. PSE pioneered the speed movement. Now they've developed the vapor category to help you find the most powerful bows on the market to fit you.
High speed equates to intense power and building the momentum you need to be successful. Are you a vapor shooter? Find out at pscarchery.com.
Welcome back. Last segment. Wrapping up the decade, wrapping up the year, the whole 9 yards. Looking back, Danny, decade-wise, what do you think? Good, bad, indifferent?
Yeah.
I mean,
I ended this decade so far above ground. So we're going to call it a good one.
It's always a good one. You can wake up the next morning.
Right?
Yeah, instead of pushing daisies up.
But yeah, no, it's been a great decade. Above ground works for me, and we'll charge into the next decade like we have a bunch of decades.
Yeah.
And we'll keep on going.
What about you, Ken? I mean, I don't know exactly what your age is, and it doesn't matter. I mean, if you don't want to tell, you can tell.
Right. No, that's fine.
But, looking back the last 10 years, what has Ken Scicluna accomplished or progressed towards in the last 10 years in the outdoors, whether it be hunting or fishing? In the outdoors. Yeah, I mean, well, I'm 36, so 10 years ago I was 26, just got married. The Lord has brought me so far from where I was then to where I am now. I was a completely different person back then. But as far as the outdoors are concerned, boy, I didn't know what a bass tournament even was. And now I've progressed where back then I fished for just about anything. But now I'm pretty much, obsessed with the bass fishing thing. And, of course, as far as deer hunting goes, that really just started to evolve the past couple of years when I stopped baiting and started being a little bit more mobile and really paying attention to the wind. 10 years ago, I wasn't a turkey hunter. I just started that maybe 7-8 years ago. So a lot, in regards to, the way I've deer hunted has drastically changed. I've picked up turkey hunting. I've changed. So a lot has changed. I've changed the way I fish, and be interesting to see how I evolve over the next 10 years. Right on. So,
see, that's it. And you keep looking forward and moving upward and onward, right?
Yep. Looking forward to it, and we'll see what 2020 brings. I'm very much looking forward to that.
It looks like it's going to be bringing some warm weather.
Yeah.
Hopefully it stays warm until we get back from ATA,
Yes.
Looking back for the 10 years for me, back 10 years ago, I had just really got heavy into getting my kids involved in the outdoors heavily, at that time. And I've got to watch all 4 of them take their first deer. I've got to watch 3 of them take deer with their bows. For me, I think that's been one of the biggest things for me as a father in the outdoors is to be able to have that happen and be able to be there and watch it. I guess me personally, though, I've seen, like you, Ken, you're talking about, your hunting philosophy or whatever is progressed. I've become much more involved in habitat and deer management, as well. And I've actually shot less deer in the last 10 years than I did the previous 10. I mean, I'm very much more selective, I guess I should say. And I've grown really, how should I say, affectionate about archery, passionate. Archery to me is the ultimate for me. I mean, I love deer hunting with a rifle or black powder, or even I used a pistol one time. But archery for me is the ultimate, and that's really where my passion lies, I guess. So yeah. I guess that's it for me. For
and you're right. Watching our kids grow up and graduate and hunt and get to that the status of being adults. Mm-hmm. And as for Kelly moving on and getting her degree and becoming a full-time teacher, and Erica's on her way to get her certificate for what she wants to do. Seeing them be successful, seeing us be successful, doing stuff like this is fun.
Oh, absolutely. And it's like, I don't know, Ken, you've heard Danny and I say this before, but if this ever becomes work and it's not fun anymore, that's probably when we'll quit doing it.
Yeah.
People ask us, why do you do that? It's not like you're getting rich. And I'm like, oh, we get rich. We get rich by the fact of us being able to help other people. That's the payoff. That's our reward is watching and helping other people and, and being part of that outdoors. So,
yeah, being part of this, in this modern times in the outdoor industry, doing this podcast, this live stream, going to ATA, I look at it, it's a real privilege. I love the fact that, like I've told you before, I really appreciate the opportunity I've had, that I still have, to be with you guys and to be on this show, to go to ATA, to be able to sit and do the show and just sit around and rap about the outdoors. I mean, it's incredible, and just to be a part of it in some small way, to me is very special. I love it.
I tell you what, we're in about 10 days, your mind's going to be blown.
Yeah,
that's what everyone keeps telling me.
Yeah, for your first time there, I don't know, Danny, anything. I mean, you always hear the stories, but it's nothing like actually being there.
You got to be there. You got to walk in. You got to walk in. And I think Indy is a great place to do it.
It is.
We're gonna come walking through the doors, and you're gonna walk in. It's gonna open up, and you're gonna just see a bunch of archery stuff, and then your eyes are gonna get big like saucers, and then it's like, okay, Ken, go, and then you'll be like a kid in a candy store, and just it's fun. And we're gonna, like Mike and I said, it's work, but it's fun work.
Yeah,
but it's a grind. It's by Saturday afternoon you'll be like, okay,
I'm ready to go home.
Right?
Ready to go home. Yeah.
So, but it's a great way to kick off
a
new decade. So that's for all of us. That's a great way to start. Can't beat it. There's something else I want to ask. Talking about trade shows. The Ultimate Sport Fishing Show. The one's going to be down, I believe, is that in Detroit? Novi?
Novi. Yep.
Are you going to that this year?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I go to that every year for sure. I never miss that. And, I mean, it's the same old stuff, same old people, but it's just good to break the monotony of winter. And I'll be there, and I'll be at Outdoorama.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
We'll probably definitely be at Outdoorama because I'm going to guess Tim's going to be there. Andrews is probably going to be there guest speaking. I'll find out at ATA when we see him.
Okay.
If he'll be there, and we'll probably go meet him down there again.
And I would love to be able to get you guys to come with me this year if we can. Go to the Indiana outdoor, whatever they call that show. It's
the Indiana one. Right?
The Indiana show. It's nice. It's a really big show. So.
Have you guys ever been to the one in Grand Rapids?
Oh yeah,
the Deltaplex.
Yeah, that's
a really cool. That's a great show too.
That is it. People ask me about that show. It's like it's the West Side's big show, and it's huge.
It's worth the trip over.
It is worth the trip.
For anybody here in Michigan that hasn't ever been to that show, if you're from the east side of the state, get over there and check it out because it is a good show.
And Dave Wilkins is usually there.
Yep.
And Dave Wilkins will probably be here, probably at Outdoorama. We'll find out.
Yep.
We'll get all the schedules together and we'll tell you who's going to be where and what. But yeah, it just then it's going to start. ATA starts show season.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it's fun.
So pretty much that's our 2019 year and recap and the whole 9 yards.
We're starting the new decade off with Ken on board, and as Dustin says there, we part of the 2019, and he's looking forward to our second decade together.
Absolutely. And definitely we need to get Dustin back on as well here this coming year and talk about his season, upcoming season, what he's looking forward to, and buck baits as well.
And we're gonna get right into the turkey season here. We're gonna start thinking about turkey season. So
yeah. And something before we go here. I mean, we're talking about new things and new adventures and all that. Something I saw that was new this year, and I just saw it I believe it was online. It was I'm a fan of Browning cameras, trail cams.
Yeah,
and they have come out with a cell camera now. It actually has cell connection. And you can, depending on what plan you buy of your coverage, you can piggyback anywhere from 2 to 6 cameras, depending on, obviously the more cameras you piggyback, the more expensive of the plan. But you can go month by month. So, I love the quality of those cameras. We're running another brand right now down in Indiana. We had some trouble with that brand. Since got some things fixed, but I have yet to see how that system's working. I need to talk with David.
You really haven't had a good sense of how that system works.
Right, yeah.
You got to get it up and working properly. You had a whole bunch of trouble there.
Is that where you have like the main, so you have your cameras out and then there's like a check station camera like closer to the truck where you can pull from there? Okay.
Yep, so you don't contaminate your area. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So how that typically and then you run a camera line, and they got to be within so much
distance or line of sight or what have you. So, but yeah, I want to talk to Browning while we're down there. It's one of the things I got really on my hit list to really talk to somebody about, because I find that really intriguing, and yeah, I might deploy if I could work out something to where I could get a couple of those, depending on the price. I'd like to get a couple of them maybe and try them out just to see what I can do with them, because I think it would help me in a couple areas. So, but before we wrap up the show, we got about 3 or 4 minutes. You know, Danny and I alluded to this. We teased this a little bit in our pre-show tease. Obscure game laws. That's what I want to talk about. I said I had a surprise I was going to drop on you guys. So I already kind of told Danny, but you don't know anything about this, so I'm going to see if you can guess where I'm going with this.
All right.
I was watching Northwoods Law today, Sunday afternoons before Danny comes over to the cabin. I like to sit back and watch. That's my outdoor show that I watch for about 3 hours in the afternoon. I'll watch 6 episodes of that and watch people do stupid stuff and get caught. So,
is that the one in Michigan?
No, this is the one that's up in the Northeast. Actually, they were in New Hampshire.
Okay.
This particular episode. So, in the state of New Hampshire, the COs actually went in on a vehicle that was parked in a public hunting area, state land, and it was way after dark. And they're like, "Well, why is this guy out here after dark? Why is he hunting? This late? Is something wrong with him? Did he get hurt? Is there something illegal going on?" So they get in there and they get to the guy's truck. He's just coming out of the woods. And he's got his bow, he's got his climber with him, okay? And they start asking questions, and he's like, yeah, he says, I just got out of the military, just got back here to the state and doing some archery hunting, and the reason I'm coming out late is I was in my climber, I waited after dark, climb down, get everything secure, pack it out. So, and as they're talking to him, I hear them say, do you have your name and address on it? And if I had to ask you what the it is, because at first I didn't hear it clearly, but then they mentioned it again later in the wrap-up. What do you think the it is? When I say, do you have your name and your address on it?
Probably his climbing stand.
That's the first thing I thought. I thought that
so
was
that was my answer, not going to lie.
Yeah.
That's not it.
And we're all wrong.
We're all wrong.
Okay.
So if you had another guess.
The weapon? The weapon?
That would be my next guess. Wrong. The arrows.
Well, that is an obscure game law.
And I like...
So being Mike, who he is, immediately got on his phone.
I'm like, there's no way this is true. I got on my phone, looked up New Hampshire game laws, archery game laws, and sure enough, here, I'm gonna read it verbatim here just because so everybody can... I have never, ever in my life ever heard this. Archery season. Archers and crossbow hunters must have their name and address on arrows or bolts when afield.
So, with that being
crazy.
said, Ken, how would you go about affixing your name and address on your arrow?
That's my next question. How do you do that? To where it stays on there?
Probably with some kind of arts and crafts. I mean, that's ridiculous, first of all, but if I had to, those little, these little, liquid paper pens,
right?
With maybe make it really visible, hot pink or something like that. I guess that's all you could do, or I would hate to etch it. I guess you could etch it in there, but that seems crazy. Or, they have the gut check stickers. I guess you could. No, because if it got covered with blood, you wouldn't be able to see it. Yeah, that's a good question.
I had Danny run over here and get me an arrow. This is Carbon Express Red Maxima, a hunting arrow. Actually, this was a target arrow that I was using a while back. But, the diameter of this, where are you going to, you could, I guess maybe on the fletching, you could write it on there.
Yeah.
So my next question is when you put something on there, you got to put it on so it stays on. So if it gets wet.
So you're going to have to put if you let's stay with the fletching, you're going to have to use permanent marker, obviously, and write small. Because you're using look at how small the veins are.
Well, those are target.
Well,
target
but
fletching.
still.
But a regular, like a mini blazer. You're going to have to write it on there with a real fine tip to where it's legible. And then what are you going to do? You're going to lacquer it to where it doesn't wipe off?
That's a good question.
I just and they actually said to him that. They said, well, you don't have your name and address on your arrows. And that's when he said, well, I just got out of the military. He said, I just come home and I wanted to do some archery hunting. And actually, I forgot that was a law here. and I can understand that. So, they didn't bust him on it, but it was just, I just found that really odd to want to put I know why they do it on tree stands.
Sure.
If you leave them out after season, but I mean, an arrow or a bolt? I mean,
I'm telling you, you get the little tags, the little key tags that hang down. You put a little string on there, and
yeah, that'll work. And the guys who are super anal about weight forward or having an arrow balanced or what have you. You start adding. Yeah, we're talking a grain or two, but you put some kind of wrap on there or something like that. You're adding weight to it. It's. All right, who said something?
There's a lot of weird game laws out there.
Okay, so Dustin Worley says right on the fletching, and then Rob Lee says don't let our governor know about that. He'll probably make us engrave our names and addresses on every pellet in a shot shell.
Right? Danny brought up a good point. Like California wanted to do the micro stamping on the firing pin, so they could pick up, your casing after you fired a round and know that it came from your firearm. But I just how can you put a name and address on an arrow?
You use those little address labels that whoever sends you for donations. That's how you do it.
Yeah, and then as soon as it gets wet, it smears.
Right.
Yeah. But that's an obscure game law. And anybody's listening to the podcast or the live stream, you got an obscure game law in your state?
Let us know.
Let us know so we can talk about it. So I thought that was pretty wild.
Thank goodness we don't bow hunt there.
Right.
And if we ever do, we got to remember.
You got to put your name and address on them.
Right.
Yeah.
So, all right. I tell you what, we're running just a little bit long here, but that'll do it for the last podcast, 2019, last podcast of this decade. So, we'll be back again next year. For those of you on the podcast, for those of you on the live stream, we'll hang around for a few minutes. So y'all take care. Have a great and safe new year. And here's to looking forward to 2020. And don't forget, you can catch us in syndication at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on goodtalkradio.com. This episode was brought to you by PSE Archery,
Spot Shooters Archery,
Easy Cut,
Packer Max,
Hunter's Blend Coffee,
Scent Lock,
Scent Blocker,
Lim Walker Game Calls,
Buck Baits,
Gut Check,
Stanislawski Release Aids,
Copper John,
Fourth Arrow Camera Arms,
Wind Sense Vapor Hunting Products,
and Rebel 6 Rubs.
Thanks for listening, and join us again here next week. Until then, remember, as we always like to say, if you're out on the water or in the woods, shoot straight and be safe. Until next week on the Up North Journal.